Good evening, everyone. I call the December 9th, 2024 school board meeting to order. It is 6:03 p.m. We're in conference room C of the Fisher Administration Building at 12121 West North Avenue. I will call the roll this evening. Mr. Morris. Here. Dr. Hoig.
Here.
Mr. Watier. Here. Dr. Worley.
Here.
Ms. Hammer-Rowland is excused. She's here. She's here. Perfect. Surprise. Mr. Meyer? Here. And Dr. Jessup Anger is here as well. We will begin with an opportunity for public comment. Members of the Wauwatosa School Board value the input of students, parents, staff members, and community members. The board's regularly scheduled meetings provide an opportunity for opinions and concerns to be expressed publicly. The board values all comments and will respectfully consider this input in decision-making. The board requests that individuals limit their comment on each item to 3 minutes. Following any comment, an individual board member may respond on the issue raised. However, it is not the intent of public comment portion of the agenda for the board to enter into a debate with a member or members of the community. Because non-agenda items are not publicly posted in advance, no action will be taken on public comment regarding non-agenda items this evening. And I add this evening, the district strives to set a good example of appropriate decorum for members of the school community, including district students. In turn, it is expected that all speakers at public meetings of the district conduct themselves in a civil manner and in compliance with board policies. Comments that are abusive, threatening, or harassing toward another individual or staff member will not be tolerated. Questions or comments regarding individual personnel issues should be directed to administration to review according to applicable district policies and procedures. Speakers are reminded that they are not immune from legal consequences related to the content of their speech, especially speech that is personally directed and contrary to the privacy, reputational, or due process rights of individuals. Mr. Morris, if you could do the timer and as well. Is there any public comment in the room this evening? Seeing none, is there any public comment online?
There are no hands raised.
With that, we will move to close public comment. Next, we will move into our consent agenda. Sorry, I've got a lot of technology things happening on my computer. Are there any items on the consent agenda which board members would like to remove for separate discussion and actions? Seeing none.
It is recommended that the school board approve the consent agenda, and I so move.
Thank you. May I have a second? Second. We'll give that to Mr. Watier. Board discussion on consent agenda. A couple things I would point out. Thank you very much to the work of the policy committee for continuing to drive through a lot of work. Some of the policies are on the consent agenda this evening. Others will be discussing in more detail. And then also thank you for the gift given to Underwood Elementary. Always appreciated when the community is thinking of our schools and our students and educators in those items. I will call the roll on this item. Mr. Morris.
Yes.
Dr. Hoig.
Yes.
Mr. Watier.
Yes.
Dr. Worley.
Yes.
Ms. Hammer-Rowland.
Yes.
Mr. Meyer.
Yes.
Dr. Jessup Anger is a yes. And the consent agenda does pass this evening. Next up is
Dr. Jessup Anger, if you didn't mind for just a moment, on the consent agenda for tonight's meeting was the approval of the employment of our Director of Strategic Communications. And I'm proud to introduce you this evening to Ms. Jessie Tuttle, who is starting tomorrow.
Oh, thank you for pointing this out. Welcome and come on up. I missed that at the bottom of a million policies.
We need communications help. This is why, right?
Yeah. Hello, I'm Jessie Tuttle. I'm super excited to start with TOSA. Yeah. Any questions from me or anything? Feel free to ask. Otherwise, I'll be around.
I am too embarrassed at this point. Help him. Yeah.
Help us all.
Thank you for joining us.
Yeah, absolutely.
This is such an absolutely important time for schools and certainly Wauwatosa to make sure that our community understands the work that we're doing, the impact of it, what we're learning and how we're getting better at what we do. So we're delighted to have you.
I'm excited to be here. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Next up, strategic goal 6 for operations, our financial audit.
That's why she's here.
I know. There's so many policies.
So every year, the school district, along with all school districts in Wisconsin, are required to have a financial audit prepared by an external auditor for submission to DPI. So this culminates the audit. Mike Sama, a partner at Schumacher Sama, is here to present our audit. He'll be highlighting a few things. As far as next steps go, there'll be further discussion, or there's an agenda item on our finance committee for the audit. And at the January meeting, first January meeting, I'll be asking the board to accept the audit. This is not something that is approved. The board can't approve an audit, but you can officially accept it as the board audit. So that's kind of the steps relative to the audit. There was roughly about 75-page audit report for the board. That's part of the agenda, as well as a memo with some of the key areas that the board and community might be interested in if you didn't want to or were unable to review all 80 pages. And Mike's going to be giving the summary of that as well. So I'll invite him up, and maybe Corey, if you could, is the PowerPoint already? I sent it to the media. Oh, okay. Good evening, everybody. So this is the report on the audit of year-end June 30th, 2024. I'm Mike Sama from Schumacher Sama. And first of all, I just want to thank Scott and the business office staff. An audit is a big job. It's long. There's a lot of steps, a lot of documentation. So we appreciate all the work you guys do to help us get through it. Okay, so just a quick overview of what we do in this audit.
So one of the purposes is to issue an opinion on whether the financials are materially accurate. Another purpose is to issue a report stating whether we found any internal control or non-compliance issues in accordance with government auditing standards. Third purpose is to issue an opinion on whether the district complied in all material respects with compliance requirements that are imposed by the federal and state single audit guidelines. And to issue another report saying whether we found any internal controls from that standpoint. We do this by examining a lot of documentary evidence, performing a number of tests. We talk to management about various things, and we have to do specific testing that the federal and state government requires us to do. And it's important to note that an audit, it does not provide absolute 100% assurance. It's reasonable assurance. So we do our due diligence, but there's always a possibility that something goes unnoticed. And so our actual results, our opinion on the financial statements themselves, we had an unmodified opinion. Oh, sorry. Oh, great. Thank you. And we had an unmodified opinion on the financial statements, so we believe them to be materially accurate. Our report on internal control over and compliance in accordance with government auditing standards, we did have 4 findings that I'll discuss a little more in depth. And then our opinion on compliance with the federal and state single audit guidelines, again, unmodified opinion. We believe the district complied in all material respects. No internal control issues were found in that segment. Just high level numbers here. So the final numbers, if you will, and just kind of the differences. So you have sort of 2 sets of financials. You have your fund statements, which mirror kind of the DPI budget, you'd be probably most familiar with. And then the government-wide statements incorporate a number of other things like the capital assets of the district, a number of large pension figures that are required to be recorded from the WRS pension. So that has additional information. But these are the balance sheets that show the assets and liabilities of the district. And then the income statements. Again, on the right, the statements of revenues and expenditures and changes in fund balance, kind of the year-to-year comparison there. And then the statements of activities also include the additional amounts I was talking about with the pension figures and things like that. And then we have a little section here on the budget. So the final budget in the general fund showed a $7 million surplus. Actual results were, deficit, and the actual results were a $15 million deficit. And we'll discuss more what happened there in the findings section. So finding number 1, this is a standard finding that every district has. It's most economical most of the time to hire the auditor to prepare the financial statements, which we have done. It's a technicality that's considered internal control deficiency if the district does not prepare its own financial statements. But in order to do that, you need to hire a CPA who's up to date on all of the requirements, and it's just not practical in most cases. So it's this finding that's pretty much there year after year, and it's not really of major concern to us. We're just required to cite it. Second one, this related to the handling of old outstanding checks. The Department of Revenue has guidelines on how this should be done. And so I think the district is now implementing a process to keep up with this on a regular basis. I think there were just some items that were a little bit too old on there. So that was essentially the issue on this finding. And finding number 3, this relates to the budget issue. So the state requires there to be a amended budget when there's changes, and it's spelled out in detail, but basically there was some miscalculations in the budget, and it should have probably been detected and then an amended budget published to the board, and that did not happen. So essentially now the district is implementing a agenda item to look at this on a regular basis, and that would essentially eliminate that issue, because by reviewing it on a regular basis, you would identify the need for an amendment then, and at the time it's needed. It was eventually found just after the year was over. And the last finding, this related to, there were some large audit adjustments needed to close the books, which happens sometimes. And so we made those adjustments, and now everything is accurate. But we do recommend some training to try to avoid those types of things so that they can be caught in advance and adjusted, not through the audit process, but by the business office. There's always some adjustments, so it's not that unusual, but I think some of it through education can be caught in advance. And then just our assessment of the responses. If the things that the district plans to do about these findings are carried out, we believe this should prevent issues like this from arising in the future. And we met Dr. Means and Mr. Ecker and I feel that we're all on the same page. Everyone understands what needs to be done. So now those plans just need to be executed. So, and then with that, any questions anyone has?
Questions from the board? Director, Dr. Woods?
If there's no comments, I just would like to thank our Finance and Resource Committee. Many of the items that we have started to implement was spurred by that committee indicating that we needed to make a change in our operations. I also want to thank Mr. Ecker for implementing them so quickly. And we continue to encourage the community to monitor our transparency and the work that we're doing in this space.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Second item we have under strategic goal 6 is an overview of the November financials.
Let me just get that pulled up here.
Just having so much.
I wanted to stay. It was so fun.
I have that effect. So typically we would have our financial update at the second board meeting of each month. We just have one board meeting this month, so that's why we're seeing it today. And I've done something a little bit different, as you probably noticed when you reviewed the presentation or if you watched the video. I'm also now comparing where we are this year versus what you would have seen had this software been used last year. So to kind of give you just trying to triangulate things for the board and community. So I'll begin, you're probably getting used to this now, kind of just the general sort of overview. The main things I want to point out this month are we have now closed ESSER. So all of our revenues and expenses with ESSER are done. The good news there is we've received more revenue than we had budgeted. So we're going to have some positive variance there. Some of that positive variance will be eaten up with additional expenses towards ESSER, but we still are going to come out ahead compared to what we budgeted. We continue to watch our purchase services and our health insurance. Those are the two most volatile areas of our budget. We heard at our last finance committee meeting about some of the interventions we're putting in place to impact those things. And for those that have been tracking our projected variances month over month, we are getting better in our purchase services. So as I had predicted earlier in the year, we know that we had front end loaded some expenditures and predicted that we would be reverting to the mean. That continues to happen. We're not there yet, but we are on top of that each month. Salaries and benefits, those are our largest expenses, are still trending well. And those are the ones that, I'm most in tune to each month. Again, here's just a picture of our revenues, basically on board. Again, you're used to seeing this now. When we finally get to December, that we will have received some state aid. So in January, when you see this report, the purple and green lines actually will be somewhere above practically zero. So we'll start to see some movement in our revenues over the next several months. Here's just pointing out for you our current year federal revenue, the purple line, is significantly higher than the projection. That is the ESSER money that has come in higher than we budgeted. So pointing that out here. All right, on the expense side, comparing last month to this month, both months essentially right on target, within 1% of projection on our salaries and benefits, and getting slightly better each month on our all of our other objects, but in particular our purchase services. And again, here's a picture of month over month totals compared to projections. Here's our general financial statement. So always want to just keep the board and community aware that even though we're talking at this point of the year about projected overruns or possible variances, there is no budget that has been overspent. And we have different interventions and levers we can pull during the year to assure that that doesn't happen. So it is a little scary to talk about variances because the idea is we want to be on top of them and we don't anticipate they're going to happen, but to be transparent, we need to show them as well. Okay, so this is just a picture of our revenues. We haven't spent a lot of time on this in prior months because we get such little amount early in the year. But just pointing out, I now believe we are going to finish the year a little bit under our projected budget in our local sources. That is primarily due to interest rates coming down and us having less fund balance even than we might recall we ratcheted down our revenue budget for interest earnings. And I think that's going to come in even under where we had ratcheted down to. You see the green flag on the federal side. That again is that ESSER money. Okay, here's our forecast. Again, last month on the top, current month on the bottom. I've still got yellow flags on our salaries and benefits. Again, I triangulate that 3 different ways. I'm confident we're going to end the year fine there, but I want to point that out. Overall, where you see the blue arrows, you can see that we are in better position this month than we were last month. And that is in large part because purchase services and non-capital objects are both getting better. They both have red flags, you can see, but the variance the last 2 months now has shrunk. Okay, so this is now last year. So had we been looking at this report last year, this is what it would have looked like. And what I want to point out, I don't know if I have a, if we look at the sort of first, oh, good, you can see my mouse. The first bracket here. This would have been spending in 2022, so 2 years ago now. Okay. So for instance, 2 years ago through November 30th, we had spent, let's say 29% of our salary of where we ended. Last year, at this point in time, we were at 33%. So had this report been being used, that is something that someone may have caught earlier. Okay, so I just want to point out how this is useful. In the area of purchase services, for instance, you can see we were 15% above. So some things like that will stand out automatically. And those are the things that you may want to key in on and that we've talked about in prior months when you're looking at these reports. What are the things you might want to take a look at? Okay, on the top here is if we had used the software last year, at this point in time, what would the variance have looked like versus this year? So through this point in time last year, you can see our variances in the kind of circled blue area here was projecting about 4.6 million in negative variance. As we know, that increased to roughly 8 million by the end of the year. And this year we're at 1.5. But the key is we're putting these interventions in place right now so that we can be assured that that doesn't happen. And then I wanted to show you now that we're several months through the year, when I talked about this sort of scary showing projections because they change month to month. I just wanted to give you a picture of where our variance, sorry, I spelled that wrong, where our variance projection has been month over month. So here we can see, in July, we were projecting essentially no variance. We hardly had any payrolls or anything at that point. We reached a low point in September, and now we're starting to climb back towards zero. At the end of the year, where we will be is either at this line, or if we're above it, that means we're able to put some money into fund balance. And then this is a comparison of last year to this year. So I just overlaid, again, here's this year. And now I overlaid the orange on top to just show what that difference looks like year over year. That is the November financials.
No more?
Great report.
Excellent.
Mr. Morris, if I may I think you're seeing the level of detail that Mr. Ecker promised the board and the community. I think as we continue to have experience, you'll continue to see the detail come along. So thank you, Scott, for the transparency. We appreciate it.
Stuff is strategic goal 4, high quality staff. Sarah will come back up. This is a time where I want to pause and also recognize, I believe Ms. Tuttle is here, who is our communications specialist.
Director. Yeah.
Director. And she's joining us for this position. I want to welcome you and thank you for being here in the audience. It's great to have you.
You're worse.
I don't know. Digging and digging. Thank you for joining us.
Good evening. As you all know, we had a transition in the position of associate principal at Longfellow Middle School this fall. Mid-year transitions to any positions can be challenging. We are really fortunate in the Wauwatosa School District that we are growing and supporting a deep bench in terms of future leaders in the organization. And so when we posted for an associate principal to finish the remainder of the school year, one of our internal candidates rose to the very top of that candidate pool, a talented candidate pool, I would add. And so this evening, we are presenting for you for approval the employment of Mr. Pat Kriegel as the interim associate principal at Longfellow Middle School. Mr. Kriegel is currently serving as interim dean of students at Eisenhower Elementary School. And so to be least disruptive to our students, which is, one of our goals in human resources is to not upset the apple cart with our kids. Mr. Kriegel is graciously waiting to make the official transition until we have a replacement for him at Eisenhower. And Pat is here this evening. Pat, would you like to say a few words?
Hello, everyone. I just want to say thank you for the opportunity. Obviously, it's a really unique one in the middle of the school year, but gives me a great chance to reconnect with some of my former Roosevelt students, where I was a school counselor for 8 years, and then just a opportunity to shine a little more and have an opportunity for growth as a leader. So thank you very much for the opportunity.
Thank you, Pat.
Mr. Wattier, I'm gonna have you read this one.
It is, it is recommended that the school board approve the 2024-25 administrative contract for Patrick Kriegel as associate principal of Longfellow Middle School, effective August 19th, 2024 for 221 days per year at an annual salary of $90,000 per workdays and salary prorated based on start date and trend, and I so move.
Thank you. May I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Dr. Worley. Any board questions or comments?
Where are we at with listing the position for the dean at Eisenhower, and like, what's our time frame for hoping to fill that position?
Yes, so the interim dean vacancy to finish the rest of the school year was put out on our application website last Tuesday morning. We do have a handful of candidates in that pool. And so Leah and I will be following up with Mr. Jordan Stein, who's the principal there. We are optimistic that we could have interviews in the next week and a half before our break. And if someone cannot start right after break, we're hoping shortly thereafter. And please note as well that sometimes those transitions are easier at term. So the end of the first semester is the end of January. So sometimes that might be a point, but we have support at Longfellow, while we're working through this transition.
I just want to say I was excited to see this on our agenda today. I've heard amazing things about you from families, both from Roosevelt and Eisenhower. So this is an exciting one for you. Welcome.
I will call the roll. Mr. Morse.
Yes.
Dr. Hoig.
Yes.
Mr. Wattier.
Yes.
Dr. Worley.
Yes.
Ms. Hammer-Rolland.
Yes.
Mr. Meyer.
Yes.
Dr. Joseph Enger is a yes. Congratulations. Sydney cannot wait to not see you for bad reasons in the office. Next up is number 6, strategic goal 1, academic performance, a school report card.
Good evening, everyone. As you all know, I am Nicole Marble, Chief Academic Officer, and I'm joined this evening by Ms. Lindsay White, our Director of Data Quality and Analytics. We are here this evening to engage in discussion around the district's state report card issued by the state of Wisconsin's Department of Education. Annually, as part of the state's accountability system, the Department of Public Instruction, or the DPI, produces report cards for each publicly funded school and district in the state of Wisconsin. A school or district's overall accountability score places the school and district into one of 5 overall accountability ratings. And since the 2015-2016 report card, the Wauwatosa School District has been identified as a district that exceeds expectations, which represents a 4 out of 5 star rating. Annually, report cards include data representing multiple indicators over multiple years. For example, the achievement and growth data on the report cards are from the 21-22, 22-23, and 23-24 school years. Data that informs the ratings behind the on track to graduation metric date back to the 2020-2021 school year. So I just want to preface that it's and I want to emphasize that the data on the school report cards is not indicative of last year alone. It's over a compilation of time. And as stated in the flip presentation, improvements that have been made at the school level as well as at the district levels may not have yet caught up to the metrics that are represented in the state report cards. The most important data for us as educators to continue to focus on is the current actionable data in front of us each and every day. Classroom teachers are inundated with student learning data on a daily basis. It is their professional responsibility to adjust their practice to ensure all students are receiving the learning that they need and ultimately deserve. Building principals are also collecting data on a daily, weekly, and monthly basis to monitor the actions that they have set in motion to support the forward progress of their school growth plans. And at the district level, we monitor systems data, which includes 3 academic checkpoints throughout the year, as well as annual end of year data. So in short, the most actionable data to monitor is what occurs at the classroom level on a daily basis. And if as a community we desire for student outcomes to continue to improve, then the adults' instructional actions and the classroom conditions that foster the learning need to change first. So at this point in time, we welcome any opportunity for discussion.
Any questions and comments?
Put a comment out there. Everything that you guys have been doing across the district, I just want to say thank you, because when I came onto the board, you heard a lot of noise that you had filtered through about what's not going right, and then the students that don't learn here and this, that, and the other. But if you dig in and you look at their report card, you know, I had already got some feedback from families and parents that are doing comparisons to our neighboring school districts. When I always tell people you have to compare apples to apples. But one thing that was more important than this one is looking at the student group performance by level by year. If you go back to our 2021, 22, and then to our 23-24 year, it's significant growth, not just on the upper end, but the students that we talk about most that we want to see do well, the students that fall into that basic and below basic levels. Going from in 21-22 in English language arts from 49.2 down to 38.1%. And that lower level, that means we are able to teach all students and get them moving. And so the community needs to know that. Same thing in math. You know, an 11-point jump, an increase on those lowest level students is huge, because that means we're getting students to not only basic, but beyond, proficient and beyond. So I don't have to talk about the advanced and proficient, because we already know they're going that direction. It's that those lower tiers of students that we're trying to get there. You guys are doing a great job doing that. So I appreciate it.
Thank you.
I agree with everything that you're saying, Mr. Morris. I think one of my frustrations is that when these report cards come out, often there's a lot of attention and frustration aimed at the district, which is Dr. Means and your team. And it seems like that's where all of the frustration kind of goes, rather than what is a much closer place of influence, which is in the classroom and at the building level. And I mean, when I think about like, what does the board do? What is our role in, moving students forward academically, making sure that all of our students are successful? I think about us being able to give our staff, teachers, all of the resources that they need to be successful in the classroom. So in the 3 years that I've been on this board, we've had 21% salary increases on average. We've updated lots of our curriculum. We've provided additional planning time. Well, you all did that one. We didn't do that one.
You provided the financial resources.
Sure. And other staff supports like deans at schools that were having issues with behavioral dysregulation or disruption, mental health interventionists, academic interventionists. I see that we have given those resources. And I also see the frustration coming back again to the district and the board. Why aren't things getting better faster? And when I first came on the board, we had a lot of families coming and talking about behavioral issues in the classroom. And they would come to the mic and we really made a concerted effort to say, this is not the place to start that conversation. This is the place to end the conversation because you've gone through all the different channels and you didn't get the traction that you wanted. I'm going to say that to our families right now. If you are unhappy with how your school is performing, that conversation should be happening at your school level first. You should be talking to your classroom teachers. You should be talking to your principal. You should be looking at your school growth plan and seeing why your school isn't growing, why the students in your school aren't growing or developing or learning as quickly as you think they should be. If you don't get any traction there, then you come to the district level. If you don't get any traction there, then you come to the board. But until those steps are followed, we're missing crucial pieces. We're missing crucial steps to help our students. So this is my push to families. If you are unhappy with what's happening at your school, go to your school and talk to them. Go to the teacher PTAs, go to your principal meeting nights, your instructional nights, have those difficult conversations. Thank you.
May I? Just put an addendum on that statement, and thank you, Dr. Hoig. When families do not start trying to solve the solution or the problem at the closest level where the problem is occurring, it actually makes our ability to intervene more difficult. So if there is a concern about the performance at a school or the performance that a student is having with in a certain classroom, when you go directly to the superintendent's office or to the chief academic officer or to the school board, it actually delays the intervention even more so. If those conversations are fulfilled at the teacher and school level, then we can act more quickly when it does come to our attention. I can share with the community that recently I spoke with a building principal who said, I don't have any parents coming to me to share their concerns about the academic performance of the school. Yet, Dr. Marble and I are consistently speaking with parents and community members who have concerns about the academic performance of the same school. So the disconnect is troubling. It's a concern because in the districts that I've been in that are considered to be high achieving school systems, that the engagement actually starts with the closest level of the impact that's happening. And then if there isn't performance, if there isn't reaction, if there isn't the type of movement that those stakeholders want, then they come to the district office and then they come to the school board. I think we have it reversed right now. And I understand that people like to go to the top at times. I understand that. But in this case, when you do that work, it actually, it creates a barrier for us to engage and to intervene as quickly as stakeholders may want us to.
I have a question. So I agree with both of those statements. What has your department done to help families know who to reach out to or help families know more in detail what is going on academically in the schools? I think we have, I know we have a communications problem in many areas, but that seems to me to be a big one. I consider myself like a really engaged parent and I don't know a lot about the academics that my students have gone through. So what is your department doing to even like curriculum that I think it was at the high schools? There's not a lot of participation. Open house at East, the halls look empty. So how are we, what's the plan to better engage families so that they're hearing the information on a regular basis? They know to talk to their teachers and they're not coming to the district and to the board as often.
So with the curriculum implementations, we are also developing alongside that, the curriculum at a glances. And so that the elementary level, that information is going home on a regular basis. At the middle school level, at least I can speak with certainty at Longfellow that there are weekly updates in the newsletters that go home of what is happening in each house, in each grade level, in each class, at least for the core content areas. At the high school level, any curriculum that has engaged in new curriculum implementation, so English 9, English 10, biology, chemistry, intro to college chemistry, all of those they do have communication. Whether or not the teacher is actually sending that home is something else for families to follow up with. So if you are a parent of a child in English 9, English 10, biology, chemistry, intro to college chemistry, you should have received communication from your teacher about what is happening in that class. And then you have other teachers who have gone above and beyond and have reached out to families and keep families engaged in the communication. I know of one math teacher in particular at one of our high schools who has gone above and beyond in terms of communication. And I know that there are families that have thanked said teacher for the communication and have copied building administration to say, this is communication that we want to see. So it's pointing out also the positive communication that is happening for a model. So if your child is engaged in new curriculum, there should be communication coming home. If there's not, please ask the teacher what's happening in the class.
And it's a prime example because if you go directly to Dr. Marble and we don't have the ability to say, well, this parent tried to reach the teacher and the teacher either ignored it or X, Y, or Z, then we're unable to intervene as actively as we should if there's a gap in communication.
Correct.
Just to follow up, are the departments collaborating on that? So if you have a teacher that has a strength in an area, so that students in different sections of the same course are getting pretty similar?
Yep, and so that has already, all of that communication is there for the teachers, that all they have to do is copy, paste, and send.
In addition to that too, not so much the curriculum aspect, but we've set in place report cards for elementary. Just went out last week and we've created an email. So in addition to just having an email or newsletter that says report cards are available, pushing out the communication through an email. So it's right there in your inbox and going into Infinite Campus to view the comments, but just trying to put it more front and center for those individuals who, aren't aware that it's coming out or just need that reminder. We also have sending missing assignment reports every other week, which last year we were doing once a month. So we've increased the cadence of that to help families just kind of be more engaged around assignments that could be missing. And then we've also created questions to ask teachers, parents, and principals, and then district office too, that we've shared in multiple different avenues just to kind of give parents an understanding of here are some questions you can ask when you're engaging with the families around or with the teachers around curriculum as well.
I think there's a lot of fear to ask teachers about what's happening in classrooms because you don't want to upset teachers. And we adore our teachers. We love our teachers. Our teachers are what, makes the schools hum, right? In addition to our students. But if they don't know that there's a frustration or a wonder that you are plagued with, then they can't help you help your child as well. And so it's not inappropriate to ask a teacher questions of what's happening or not happening in a classroom to support your child, because ultimately our parents and guardians are our students' fiercest advocates. And so we encourage that dialogue and that partnership.
Miss White is a former assistant principal in elementary school. Dr. Marble and I are former principals. The best teachers I've worked with are the ones who are actually offended when they haven't had a chance to address the problem with the parent. Those are the teachers that will always say, Damon, just tell them to email me and I'll talk to them, because of what Dr. Marble just said. They want the very best for the children. They want the very best for the children that they're teaching. They can only do that when they have a true partnership with the family in the household. If we skip 2 or 3 steps, then that partnership can't be formed. And when the partnership isn't formed, then we're unable to address the needs of the student.
Think back to my time when I started the board about 8 years ago. And the report cards were kind of the time of year where we got a snapshot, trailing though it may be, of what's happening. We have much more updated data. I know you all have rich dashboards that the board has access to, and I certainly am looking at it on an ongoing basis. I'm curious, we have implemented and done, and thank you for kind of walking through this specific one of, here's the interventions that were in place, that were not in place. I am grateful to the community who provided us through the operating referendum the resources to continue to really prioritize academic outcomes achievement, the interventionists, the apparatus that is really driving outcomes and achievement. And I know that it's not a learning both happens immediately, and the data takes a while for us to get it to where we want it to be. And I think in my mind, I have always articulated, I expect all of our schools to be exceeding expectations. And as a district, I want to significantly exceed expectations. What are we seeing, and what is the story that we're seeing unfold? And where do we think we're going next with how the interventions are working or not? And that's maybe a little bit outside the scope of this, but at a high level, where are we seeing things trend towards as we move forward? And I know we'll have, I think in February, we'll have more deep dive into our milestone data and a lot of the things as we close out the first semester, grading and so on. But anything that you can share that you're seeing in the data?
Yeah, we have flooded early intervention with our youngest of learners, because once gaps open in terms of learning, they're very hard to close. And so we are hyper vigilant and hyper focused on intervening early with our youngest of learners with their literacy and numeracy development. So that is one area that we are monitoring very, very closely. Additionally, we are monitoring how the curriculum implementation is going, and we are in classrooms on a regular basis, making sure that the learning and the curriculum that has been approved. Thank you again to all of you and to our community. That is laying traction, because that hasn't always been the case. Where we've approved curriculum, we have left it to our buildings to implement that, and we didn't have the personnel to support the implementation. And so we have the support to move the implementation forward, and I'm really pleased with what we are seeing in the vast majority of our spaces. Our youngest of learners are being asked to do some very challenging things, and it is so amazing to see. I'm a former Spanish teacher, as we've talked about, and grammar is kind of my jam. And I was in a second grade classroom the other day, and they were talking about collective nouns, and some adults don't know what collective nouns are, and it was amazing to see. And so that's just one example of our kids are being asked to do hard things that are on grade level. We are moving in a positive direction.
What would we expect to see in the next 2 years in terms of I know we've got some more curriculum that's being updated. If the community were saying, okay, what's next for the district? Can you share a little bit about some things that are already happening that parents and families might begin to see?
Yeah, so we are in the middle of a math audit, and we'll have that information in March for the board and the community. But we'll be making some adjustments in math instruction and math curriculum as a result of that. Social studies is moving through the pipeline as well. And I'm really excited to come back in the spring with an update on our STEM for All. There's some amazing things that are happening with our design team right now on how we're going to connect the dots to our different curriculum areas that are already in play and how we are continuing to stretch students' minds around the design thinking process and critical thinking skills.
But what you notice, what she did not say is, well, here's a data point, or here's the points that we're going to increase. That can't be shared because those conversations have to happen at each of the buildings that we have children in. And so it's incumbent on a parent to go to the principals are responsible for providing updates to the school growth plan. How many times a year?
3 times per year.
Times a year. So they've already provided one. The second one's coming up in January, February, and then there's one in the spring. If that conversation isn't happening around what's the growth on the school growth plan, our job is to provide resources. Our job is to make sure that there are structures and systems in place. Our job is to make sure that we're supporting the hardworking staff members and make sure that they're compensated for the hard work that they're doing. I think we have done that and we will continue to do it. But each school is unique and different. And it would be negligent if we just said, well, here's a point total. Every school is going to travel their own journey. And that's the beauty of the school growth plans. We strongly encourage not only parents, but staff members to make sure that they're working with their building principal to make sure that that school growth plan is a true blueprint for growth and student outcomes. That is where the work happens. Our job is to make sure that they have the resources. And I guess the last thing I would say is you deserve a lot of credit as a board. Excuse me. Because if we have worked with, and I try to be very open with our faculty and our principals. And I share with them that if they believe that they need more resources, don't hesitate to tell me. And you've made it very comfortable for me to ask you for resources. Now, Mr. Ecker is going to, he's going to say, watch it. But you've also made it very comfortable for me to make sure that if a school community of teachers and a principal has said, we need this, that we do come and talk to you. I can tell you right now that our principals are saying we're staffed. We have the resources. Now it's just a matter of what's happening in those buildings on a day-to-day basis. And we're here to support them, and we're here to hear. We're going to be good listeners if there's a need for more resources under obviously strict financial considerations, but we believe that the team has put a good structure in place. Now it's a matter of us just staying consistent with the program.
Dr. Worley, and Mr. Meyer.
Yeah, thanks for the information, the data, the overview. Very helpful, very easy to understand. I guess I just ask, as you look at this and see where this district as a whole, and when you do look at schools within the district as a whole, are there ideas that you're noticing or things you're noticing about our target group? Our target groups that you see either as really positive or a place that you has maybe reset your goals for the rest of the year or in the coming years?
One of the things I can say about our target groups is when we started breaking down our students that are in our target group for this upcoming year, they give us a target group to start looking at and say, these are the kids that may not be proficient if support is not given. When we compared some of the schools to the students who are receiving intervention and or are being monitored in a tier 2, they were the same students that we were seeing in our target group. So we know that our systems and structures of our SST are capturing the kids. Does that mean every kid? We still have some comparison to do. But when we pulled those groups originally, what myself and Ms. Foch were seeing was the same kids that were in the target group were also kids that were being caught in the SST conversations to triangulate the data. So that speaks to the systems and structures that we have in place more strongly even this year than we did last year. But being able to compare that and say the kids that DPI is identifying are also kids that we're catching in our process throughout our 3 cycles throughout the year.
That's great news. Are there particular, just now seeing this, are there any goals that are being adjusted or just staying on track with what you all are doing?
The swift impact will be at the classroom level and at the building level. And so our goal is to just stay consistent, as Dr. Means has said, with the implementation plans that we have for the different curriculum and the professional learning surrounding that. And any adjustments that need to happen at this juncture really is in studying the data that our principals are monitoring for their school growth plans.
Great.
Thank you for educating me tonight. I did not know what a collective noun was. But I did know that a group of owls is called a parliament. And a group of ferrets is called a business. So that's fun stuff.
Those are all collective nouns.
Yes, they are collective nouns. And if you go, you can find collective nouns for animals. And that would be a fun way to teach what collective nouns are, even for 68-year-olds. So my only comment is I am surprised to hear from my co-board member, Ms. Heimer Rowland, of low attendance at open house. And, you know, back in my day, open house is where you met the teachers and you established a personal relationship or, you know, a one-to-one human relationship with a teacher. You knew their face, you knew what their voice sounded like. So when the phone rang and somebody called you about your kid in school, you knew that it was the teacher's voice, but you also knew who to call, right? And so, I mean, I benefit from the blessings of websites, the school district website and website for anything you want to see, like what are collective nouns for animals. But and the social media groups, but those things, folks, as we see, are no substitute for going there as human beings and meeting with human beings. And so maybe that has something to do with this, that if we can get parents to come to the open house in person, as if there was something we can do with our communications director to promote that. Maybe that helps. I mean, I don't know. I really am surprised. It's like, well, I guess when I think about it, it makes sense because I could think I can find everything I want on the website or from my parent group, you know, my bunch of parent friends and my social media Wauwatosa group. And it's not the same. Well, so thank you. Any final comments, questions from the board? Students, anything? Thank you all very much. I look forward to our conversation. February, next is strategic goal 5, culture and community, action to appoint an expulsion hearing panel and alternative board member for the second semester of the 24-25 school year. This is the 3rd semester that we have utilized a hearing panel of the board, so the full board for expulsions. Wanted to check in with board colleagues to find out who has capacity over the course of spring semester. This will carry us through summer until an appointment occurs. It'll actually probably, the new board will probably need to appoint following elections in late April. So wanted to check in and looking for 3 volunteers, and I will raise my hand for one of the spots to serve on the panel. So I could be voted down on that, but would volunteer for what? So we'll need at least 2 others and then an alternate.
Dr. Cheesemaker, Mr. Lieutenant.
Just a point of clarity or maybe a question. It might be helpful. I would just not want us to be found in a spot where the election happens. And if someone may not or may not know if they're rerunning, it may be wise to make the 3 standing members that will be second semester, ones that we know are not up for election.
Once we end this term in April.
True, I just still don't think there'd be a window of time depending on how fast an expulsion may need to happen. We never know when.
I'm just saying that.
Makes sense.
But one person could be that, sure. I mean, you could go with 3 and 4.
I'd be happy to serve as an alternate. That would be Dr. Worley, Mr. Morris, Ms. Emerald.
So,
I can think.
Thank you, Mr. Pinion. Dr. Worley, can you read this one?
It is recommended that the school board appoint an expulsion hearing panel of Mr. Morris, Ms. Heimer Roland, Dr. Worley, and an alternative board member, Dr. Jessup Anger, for the second semester of the 2024-2025 school year, and I so move.
You may have a second.
Second.
Thank you. Any board discussion on this? Seeing no, I'll call the roll. Mr. Morris,
yes.
Dr. Hoyt,
Yes.
Mr. Wachier,
Yes.
Dr. Worley,
Yes.
Ms. Heimer Roland,
Yes.
Mr. Meyer,
Yes.
Dr. Joseph Anger is a yes. Congratulations and thank you to all the board members serving in that role. We now have several second readings and our action to approve policies. First, I'll have Mr. Morris read.
It is recommended that the school board approve policy 2221, special observance days, and I so move.
May I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Dr. Worley. Anything from the policy committee on this one?
So again, looking off the notes that you have in, I'm just using up time so I can get back up to 2221 special observance days. We had a discussion on 1028, a policy committee, then on 1111, a board member asked to add Indigenous Peoples Day, and a community member around the same time requested the following additions as well: Jewish American Heritage Month and Holocaust Remembrance Day. So when we met at 11/25/24, the policy committee decided to add all 3 of those to that table of green. Below, these are not the ones above, just a reminder of what the state law requires. The table green is TOSA's own list. And so we are bringing it back to you with these changes, either as a second reading and or as an action to approve.
Board questions or comments? Seeing none, I'll call the roll. Mr. Morse,
Yes.
Dr. Hoyt,
Yes.
Mr. Wachier,
Yes.
Dr. Worley,
Yes.
Ms. Heimer Roland,
Yes.
Mr. Meyer,
Yes.
Dr. Jessup Anger is a yes, and that item passes. Second reading and or action to approve the next policy 2230 articulated curriculum. Dr. Hoyt.
It is recommended that the school board approve policy 2230 articulated curriculum, and I so move.
May I have a second?
Second.
Give it to Mr. Morris. Any comments from the policy committee on this item?
So at, the board did not make any requested changes at 1111, but when we brought it back to policy, we had some public comment. We had 2 things. We had Dr. Marble suggesting to change the title articulated curriculum to curriculum course guide, because we want to be really clear that throughout the document referencing curriculum course guide was changed to articulated curriculum. We want to be clear about what this is that people are looking at. and what function it is. And then we had community comment as well about the community member who has experienced that it's difficult for special education students and families in particular to know which courses that are specifically open to them that they can access. And so they're finding in their group, their committee that meets, that a lot of parents don't know about this. And so the idea is to go ahead, that kind of change or making it more clear is more of an administrative process. And so we talked about that. We saw that we should go ahead with the policy and bring it to the second reading, but that there would be a communication between Dr. Marble and the special education director to make it clearer to families and get the communication clear. Did I get that?
Got it.
Any board discussion or questions? Seeing none?
I just,
Oh,
I have,
yeah.
I'm sorry.
can you, Dr. Marble, tell us why you wanted to call it the articulated curriculum versus a course guide?
Yeah, the state statute around this isn't necessarily the course guides that you all approve every year. It really is the articulated curriculum. Should students know and be able to do as a result of taking this class? That's not the intent necessarily of the course guides, but the articulated curriculum. And so earlier when I mentioned the at-a-glances, the communication that should be going home to families, that is the articulated curriculum. And so moving forward, as we bring other curriculums to be approved, we will be bringing forward the articulated curriculum in conjunction with any of the resources that we would need to make that articulated curriculum come to life.
Thank you.
Seeing no other questions and comments, I'll call the roll. Mr. Morris,
Yes.
Dr. Voigt,
Yes.
Mr. Watier,
Yes.
Dr. Worley,
Yes.
Ms. Hammerell,
Yes.
Mr. Meyer,
Yes.
Dr. Jessup Baker is a yes. And that item passes. The next is, it is recommended that the school board approve, second reader action to approve policy 2270, religion in the curriculum.
It is recommended that the school board approve policy 2270, religion in the curriculum, and I so move.
Next second.
Second.
Mr. Morris. Policy committee.
Sure. So again, the board did not ask for any changes, but when we did our second review of that, as we always do at policy committee, we had community comment requesting that the word may be changed to shall. And that's the idea of having a course that covers religion. The policy committee and administration had a good and lively conversation about that and came to the conclusion that we would prefer to keep the word may. But so this could have gone on the consent agenda, but we wanted you to be informed about that conversation. So we put it on this agenda. We didn't make further changes. But we wanted to bring it as a second read that you all would have in case you have any comments or questions about that. This is, we did a little, we were helped with the Neola guide and Dr. Means. We were able to say this is how it's been. This isn't new terminology. May is the language that has been used throughout. And frankly, we all felt that it was the more flexible language. And we also reflected on that it's not a single course, but there are many courses that are teaching our students about this right now in the curriculum. And we felt that was possible because of that word was more flexible. So that, we'll just put that out there. Since there was this lively conversation, we thought it was good to bring it back as a second read.
Any board questions or comments?
Question then. So just to repeat, so it's clear, we're confident that there's teaching of differing religious philosophies, not as religion, but as how people think around the world, and that we do cover that in different areas. And that to have a course that was specifically stated to that as a shall or whatever. I mean, we just don't want to.
There could be a course. This doesn't oppose having a course, but we don't
Right.
have one specifically right now. We could have one.
Right.
The conversation was also about when you have a course, you have to have enough people to take it
Yeah.
and the
Right.
staffing for it. But I will mention, I brought up, I have a child in AP Hub, which all of our students have to take. And there is a project that that was just finished.
So
We're just
you're right.
discussing it, that does go to look at religions of the world. So I know that's at least one place.
So there's not really a substantive problem to solve. So why legislate a solution for something that's not a problem?
Right, I mean,
Yeah.
yeah. I mean, the may is actually, or shall is a narrower because it pushes towards a singular course.
Right.
Whereas a may makes it possible to have a singular course, and should there be space, interest, and the process, but right now it is elsewhere in the curriculum. We did a little brainstorming on that, so.
Okay, so
That makes it clear.
we're not opposed to teaching what, you know, that the Tao Te Ching or Confucius or anybody else had to say. In fact, we might actually do that. I don't know, but there's not a red tape involved in
No,
making it happen.
no, what we don't
I
have that
agree
some
with that.
districts have is there's a few districts that may have a specific course.
Mhm.
This policy does not prevent that. We don't have that course right now.
Okay, I agree. Thank you.
I may also just add that there are state statute requirements of different things about religion that do need to be taught. For example, the Holocaust and other genocides. So that in our social studies curriculum, that is part of some of the things that we are revising and reviewing to make sure that that is part of the curriculum. So that does tie into religion.
Thank you all for the explanation and for bringing this forward to the board in this manner. I will be calling the roll. Mr. Morris,
Yes.
Dr. Hoig,
Yes.
Mr. Watier,
Yes.
Dr. Worley,
Yes.
Ms. Hammer Rolland,
Yes.
Mr. Meyer,
Yes.
Dr. Joseph Banger is a yes, and that item passes. We also have several first readings of policies, and I will turn over facilitating through that process to Russell Worley and Mr. Morris.
I get the here.
Goes to 2420 and goes 2420 to 2450 and then jumps. I'll let you know.
Okay. All right, 2420 education for employment. And so basically, up the committee meeting on 11/25. This is statutory Board of Education from last year. And so we've added this on here for our first reading. Questions, we'll move on to 2421 work experience for students. Same difference as of the last committee meeting on there. This is a district specific policy updated that hasn't been updated since 2009. And we were adding this with this update here as first reading here. District.
It's district specific, yeah.
Moving forward with 2421.01 students as trainees. This one here is policy committee notes were referred to related to the administrative guidelines of 2421.01, protecting students from being taken advantage of, basically. So we're adding that to make sure that everybody's aware of that.
Fair Labor Standards Act. So in both these cases, we're making sure with these two policies that that our policies are protecting the students, but allowing the training to happen.
Moving forward to 2430, district-sponsored clubs and activities. Per our most recent committee meeting on here, this is just updating the 2023 standards. And Dr. Means added the suggestion, I would say, to add a designee after superintendent, so it doesn't just always fall on just the superintendent language. Forward to 2430.01, special programs by community volunteers. This one, Just the 30 days prior to the planned starting date of any suggested activity. We'll move on to 2440, summer or interim session school. Basically on there from our last policy committee meeting, the interim, 2450, 40? Oh. We're on 40 or 50? 2440. Yes, 2440, summer or interim session school. Committee notes on here where the interim is used based on the state statute, and this updated policy replaces the current policy 2440. Next up is 2450, community and adult education. Per the policy committee on 1125, it was discussed that the policy committee should refer to Fund 80 to provide transparency to the community and add cross-reference language to policy 6236. Basically in there that 6236 Community Services Fund, Fund 80 will need to be updated to cross-reference policy 2450. It's read in that for the first read. Moving on to 2510, the adoption of textbooks and primary curricular resources. After the committee meeting, the language in green is district specific. Per Dr. Means' recommendation there, we discussed changing the word textbooks. Because obviously it's 2024. We don't just use textbooks. And Dr. Zimmerman, Mike, it's a new time here. We have lots of different ways of all kinds. That's right. And so we basically said we should update these things here. So the statute uses the word textbook, so it should remain in the title, but the title will be changed to the adoption of textbooks and also primary curricular resources. Moving on to.
Can I just ask, I mean, this is an incredibly minor point, but I saw, so the second paragraph, it says shall not discriminate, the textbook shall not discriminate on the basis of sex, including transgender status, and then that's like scratched out. Should just say gender status, change of sex, or gender identity. Aren't those all like sort of redundant? Can we just say gender identity? Yes. Just to make it.
Mr. Payne?
I would agree with your point. That's more inclusive term.
Yeah. I certainly am not a professional. But are we sure that those are enough words? That the community involved is very careful with their use of words. I know we're all wanting the same thing. I'm not questioning anybody's intent. I'm just kind of course, Mr. Pena would be lead expert.
We can take it back.
Could
Right. We can take it back to committee. I would say when we're talking about the terms in parentheses only, that gender identity does encompass all three of those terms.
Okay, right. I know we're all just trying to be really careful.
If somebody disagrees or
Right.
has some more inclusive language that we should use, I would certainly be open to.
Yeah, or even if we pass it and if we find out later, we can amend it. Just everybody let us know, right, what it's supposed to be. Yeah, we all want the same thing. I'm just trying to help. Okay, thanks.
So as a sociologist, I would say sex and gender are not interchangeable in the same thing. So typically that's why you see both listed. So that maybe we just need to have some discussion on that.
At my age,
more than identity.
at my age, I've had more opportunities to get in trouble and say things the wrong way. So I'm kind of, even with something that used to be okay is not okay. And I respect that. That's why I just want to be really careful. And we all do. Right. Thanks.
I've written down and checked the language on that.
Good note on there.
Anything else on 2510?
Moving forward to 2521, selection of instructional materials and equipment, supplemental curricular resources. And so this policy is new to TOSA, and the committee discussed changing the title to selection of instructional materials and equipment and supplemental curricular resources.
This one has the same language in the fifth paragraph down. Whatever we land on, let's just be consistent.
Assistant Superintendent. Moving on to 2522, library media centers. Let's see. Notes.
I think that was. The library. It brings a whole bunch of policies together, so it's a more comprehensive policy than what we have now.
Gotcha. I was gonna say, yeah, so
It should be proof to you that it's comprehensive. The, what you see, in green throughout would be making sure that it has the language that we use. So.
moving on to 2531, copyrighted works. Yeah, basically just new formatting on this one. Nothing new other than the formatting. Moving on to 2605, academic program accountability and evaluation. This is the district specific policy, and the Neola template language is removed and replaced with our own specific language for TOSA. Moving forward to 2623, student assessment. This policy was updated according to the state statute. No other additional changes. The last one on our list, 2700, annual district report. This one was, we're sending a duplicative of bylaw 0174.1 back from our original 1024 or 1028 policy committee moved forward, no further changes. And then our last one, we were just adding it back to the consent agenda for this meeting. Anything else on that, Dr. Worley?
2701.
Is it on for tonight?
It's supposed to be.
Oh, it is. Yes, I missed one. Spoke too soon. 2700.01 school performance and state accountability report cards.
Updated for DPI regulation.
Right.
Good night for that one. It's school report card timing. So we wanted to make sure we got that on tonight.
That's our last one.
Cool. So, several of those will come back on the consent agenda if there was no changes made. Otherwise, they'll come
There
back.
are only two that looks like we'll have further discussion on. Two that we identified.
Thank you all very much for, I know you're getting close.
Well, then we get to start on that then. On the regulation. Plus, something changed since we.
That's right.
We start all over.
Policy for sure.
Like a year.
We will now move into board governance. We have a couple action items here. High level for the board. We're making some adjustments to committee responsibilities, as well as we're looking first for a delegate. The delegate will need to attend the state school board convention. That happens, I think, third week of January. Yes, sir. And you will, having served on this, I can share a little bit about it. You basically go in and sit with representatives from many school districts across the state to review and give feedback on WSB, which is the Wisconsin Association of School Boards, policy booklet. That policy booklet guides what they're going to advocate for, representing school boards across Wisconsin. So our normal course of operations for this would, we get that policy booklet. We would have an opportunity as a board in service. The district administration would have a chance to look at it. We would share anything with the delegate. We do not have to have a delegate, but we more often than not have my time with it.
The
What's been
delegate
the timing of
assembly
the
is
delegate?
on Wednesday, January 22nd from 1:30 to 3:30. So again, Wednesday, January 22nd from 1:30 to 3:30. It tends to go over. So if you plan to go, it's likely that you won't get out at 3:30. Probably closer to plan from a 1 to 4 timeframe.
Anybody available, interested in attending and serving as our delegate?
Nobody? Really? I'm
Not available.
Not available.
So I bailed on the finance committee. Thank you, Jason. But if no one has time, while I'm looking at my calendar, I could. If we want someone there.
I think we do. There's a resolution being offered by a school board to take a stand on transgender student athletes in the state, which is in conflict with the WIAA stance on transgender students already, student athletes already. And so I think it's being brought to the delegate floor for school boards to weigh in on it. And I think, frankly and candidly, there will be other school districts that will look to this school board to see where you take a stand.
I am available if it is the will of the board to send me.
That'd be great because I have a conflict. So I'll be picking up my kids from school and there's no way out of that day. So I appreciate you being willing to be there.
And the topic, I'm somewhat familiar with it.
Well, we would have a conversation.
Yeah,
on that
what's the
beforehand.
will of this board?
Correct.
At that assembly. I would also like heavily support us enabling any of our student board members to attend the assembly. That is a fascinating meeting where people, you've been there, people from all over the state are weighing in on different topics, and you really understand the diversity of thought around our state about local, small districts, large districts, rural, or, to see that's just an incredibly educational afternoon to hear. If you're a student, you're interested in politics or government, it's a big deal to be there. So, okay.
Mr. Meyer,
When it comes to looking at if students are able to attend that, I do want to point out that January 22nd is the start of finals week, at least for East. I'm not sure about West, but just like, so now with finals week, there are different schedules. So like, I don't know the schedule off the top of my head. I usually do, but I don't today. So there may be a possibility, and that may just be a look at, and certain students may be available and certain may not, but.
And I don't even know if is the public allowed to attend? It's the public. Okay, so could we leave it flexible for them? Sure, for somehow get the placeholder so they could at the last minute mean, for my opinion, if you say you want to go and you change your mind the night before because something's happening with your finals, you should be free to change your mind the night before, and we'll just figure out any cost issues or anything. But if you can, it certainly is a one kind of a special kind of a thing to see. Is it true, right? It's to see all this.
My experience is a lot of it is super boring, just like our policy discussion we had. Right?
Yep.
It's like the wheels of governance are not necessarily exciting in many cases. And then things will pop up, and then certain things will pop up that are not of interest to some districts and are really of interest to others. So that's, I think, when there's different issues will pop up in different ways. But if any of the students are interested, and I was there last year, and I think I attended twice now, so I'd be happy to share my thoughts. And you could go for a bit and not stay for the whole thing. And I would say always prioritize your academics during final or napping. If you're not, because finals are exhausting. Mr. Watier, can you make the motion with Mr. Meyer's name?
Before the motion is made, I commit to representing the will of the board as stated to me in a preparation meeting. Whether I agree with that or not, I will state the will of the board. Okay.
Appreciate it. It is recommended that the school board designate Mr. Meyer as a school board delegate to the Wisconsin State Education Convention in January 2025, and I so move.
May I have a second?
Second.
Thank you. I will call the roll. Mr. Morris,
Yes.
Dr. Hoyt,
Yes.
Mr. Watier,
Yes.
Dr. Worley,
Yes.
Ms. Hammer-Roland,
Yes.
Mr. Meyer,
Yes.
Dr. Jessup Banger, yes. Thank you, Mr. Meyer, for taking on that responsibility. Next is action to appoint Eric Jessup Banger to the Legislative Advocacy Committee. Mr. Watier, again, is going to be stepping off that committee. Mr. Meyer stepped off the Finance Committee, and Mr. Watier will be stepping onto the Finance Committee. So thank you to those who are making some shifts. Dr. Worley.
It's recommended that the school board appoint Eric Jessup Anger to the Legislative Advocacy Committee, and I so move.
May I have a second?
Second.
I'll give that to Mr. Morris. Any discussion? I will call the roll. Mr. Morris,
Yes.
Dr. Hoyt,
Yes.
Mr. Watier,
Yes.
Dr. Worley,
Yes.
Ms. Hammer-Roland,
Yes.
Mr. Meyer,
Yes.
Dr. Jessup Banger is a yes. Action to appoint Jason Watier to the Finance and Resource Committee.
It is recommended that the school board appoint Jason Watier to the Finance and Resource Committee, and I so move.
May I have a second?
Second.
Give that to Dr. Worley. I think she came up to school.
Yeah, she was first.
And I will call the roll.
Oh, may I comment?
Please.
Jason, I want to thank you for taking on this role. Life circumstances for me have changed faster than I anticipated, and I appreciate your stepping in to take this role. And I think your fresh eyes and background will be a very valuable contribution to the committee. So I want to say thank you.
I look forward to the challenge.
Make it fun. I will call the roll. Mr. Morris,
Yes.
Dr. Hoyt,
Yes.
Mr. Watier,
Yes.
Dr. Worley,
Yes.
Ms. Hammer-Roland,
Yes.
Mr. Meyer,
Yes.
Dr. Jessup Banger is a yes, and you are appointed. Thank you. Congratulations. We will now adjourn into executive closed session.
It is recommended that the school board adjourn into executive closed session pursuant to Wisconsin statute 19.85, parens 1, parens C, considering employment, promotion, compensation, or performance evaluation data of any public employee over which the governmental body has jurisdiction or exercises responsibility, specifically to discuss the superintendent's performance evaluation, and I so move.
May I have a second?
Second.
It is 7:42 PM, and I shall call the roll. Mr. Morris,
Yes.
Dr. Hoyt,
Yes.
Mr. Watier,
Yes.
Dr. Worley,
Yes.
Ms. Hammer-Roland,
Yes.
Mr. Meyer,
Yes.
Dr. Jessup Banger is a yes.